Hey everybody, this is the last of these videos that I'm going to put together while at the hotel in Washington, D.C. So what I'm going to do here is look for grants for Turkmenistan. So Turkmenistan's project was about coding skills and coding schools for girls and helping to make sure that girls are aware of coding opportunities. So we're going to go to alumni.state.gov. I was logged out to do inactivity. So I'm going to log in again, and this time I think I remember my password. Mabruk, I got it. Okay, competitions and resources. Now, I'm not actually going to start off with the Foundation Center this time. I'll be there in just a moment, but we're going to look at competitions. So there's the AEIF, which remember, that is the Alumni Engagement Fund grant that you guys are all eligible for. And I'm going to talk just a second about the fact that if I remember correctly, this may have changed with the new changes in how the AAF is going to be managed that we heard about yesterday. But you can get sometimes quite a bit more than $25,000 if you have two different countries working together. Now, again, this may have changed. The AEIF will now be administered directly through U.S. embassies, was what they told us at the State Department yesterday, which means that you should email your best contact at the U.S. Embassy, or you can email, I believe it's aeif@alumni.state.gov. And if that's the wrong one, just ping me and I will see if I can get you the right email address or message somebody at TechWomen at IIE. So you can apply through the embassy to get access to this funding, which you should, because this funding was literally designed for you guys. So, certainly for alumni exchange folks. So you can create a project and invite other alumni to work with you, which is pretty great. You can learn more about AEIF because they're going to be opening. This is how it ran last year. It'll be a little bit different later. And then there's research tools. So just remember that there are really cool grant competitions and resources available through the State Department, not just through these third-party organizations that I've been talking about in this other couple videos. Okay. There's also a bunch of challenges and prize competitions that are run by 50 agencies across the U.S. government. So here, it looks like maybe the link doesn't work. Okay, there we go. Now it works. So challenge all sorts of cool self-healing material systems, adverse marine attacks, solar decathlon. There's a lot of really cool grant opportunities. Maybe they are open to people outside the United States. Maybe they're not. You have to look for each of them individually. But it's still pretty cool. So for example, there are ones about empowering women with digital skills for business. You could reasonably make some of the argument that you would want to fund some of the Turkmenistan project using this grant competition. It's due April 30th, so you've got a little bit of time. Representing Tunisia, American Council of Learned Societies. Interesting. I wonder if they pronounce it learned. Okay. I'm just reading this over really fast. Oh, interesting. Oh, I think this is a shared project. I think. I don't know. I'm not totally clear what this is, but it looks super awesome, and $40,000 to study the history of bilingualism in diasporic African communities sounds amazing, and like it would be a really, really fun time, particularly if you're looking for something like PhD funding. Okay, back to our old friend, the Foundation Center. I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that there are a lot of resources in here, stuff like enabling entrepreneurs, mentor talks, alumni entrepreneurs, startup toolkits, calculating startup costs, a bunch of different funding sources, toolboxes, all sorts of USAID More Than Money report. So technical assistance. So maybe you don't need cash, you need somebody's help setting up a website or designing a program. Those are also things that you can get in kind. All right, so let's look again. We are looking at lack of awareness in Turkmenistan of STEM careers as an option for girls. So let's look. We're going to start with a geographic focus. Turkmenistan. And now, just to get a sense, so again, geographic focus means where do they want the money to be spent? Location is where is the grant maker or the recipient based? I don't personally find the location field as helpful, which is why you haven't seen me using it. So our entire pie of all of the things that have in the past gone to Turkmenistan is 111 grants. We might want to expand that out to Central Asia. It kind of depends. So let's look at these and let's think about women and girls, as we all spend most of our time thinking about women and girls. Now, see here, maybe you have a project that you want to focus on older women or senior women or young women. Those will significantly narrow the pie. They'll narrow the overall options. So that's why I'm not looking at those in particular. Okay, so we're at 12 grants. Some of our folks that we've seen before: Open Society Foundation, Coca-Cola Foundation, Global Fund for Women, Urgent Action Fund for Women. And then anonymous recipients, which is great. This looks a little silly. Anonymous recipient received $236,538 for the purpose of democracy. Okay, cool. So we've got grants, and it looks like they gave this to Minnesota, but, oh, this is kind of cool. The Estrella Lesbian Foundation for Justice gave $5,000, Global Fund for Women, which we've already explored their website. So it was a public awareness campaign around LGBTQ issues, not really a fit for what you're looking for here. But let's think about National Endowment for Democracy. Now, we're running into one of the things that I've seen in doing grant research for TechWomen projects for the last couple of years, which is that the donor community has what we would call groupthink about what particular regions of the world need help on. And that does not necessarily match with what the people, particularly the women in the countries, actually think they need help on and need funding for. So there is a lot of funding for democracy work in Central Asia. There is not nearly as much funding for gender work. There is, in an opposite example, there's a lot of funding for gender and women's health issues in Rwanda, but finding democracy funding for Rwanda is tough going. So again, we're looking at Turkmenistan. Maybe let's not do women and girls. Maybe let's look for general science funding. Okay, and so let's say technology, and let's do science. So science has all of these subcategories: computer science, marine science, social science, all these different options. So we're gonna search. No dice. Nothing in the science category. Okay, so let's think a little bit more holistically. It's education, right? So we click on education, 26 grants. That's getting closer. All right, so it looks like this organization called No Bosfor and the Arzu, out of school learning. Okay, hey, out of school learning, this is where we're kind of getting a sense of what language foundations are using. So maybe a coding academy is called out of school learning. $3,000, Civics for youth, adolescent and students. They don't seem to be working in Turkmenistan, but it's possible that it seems like the geographic areas served are not always super accurate. So, oh, interesting. They don't seem to have a website, but we're looking at their 990 form. This is the form that every 501c3, every nonprofit in the US has to file. Okay, so what we're trying to figure out is, okay, so they live at a P.O. box in Washington, D.C. They don't have a physical address listed. They do have board members listed, so you could, for example, friend these people on LinkedIn and ask them what their application process is like. They let themselves be listed as board members, so they probably care enough to tell you. Jill Miller is the board treasurer. You could probably reach out to her. Looks like they do send out a bunch of money. They just don't have a website. You'll get used to looking through these forms. I know it looks really overwhelming right now, but once you've looked through a couple hundred of them, it's not that exciting. Okay, so they send out grants and similar amounts paid the I think that's a $. It looks like a sideways infinity sign. The $1,000 is a non-interest loan to one Turkmen youth to cover expenses. Line 16 is other expenses, was to include expenses association of website, software subscriptions. It'd be really great if they had a website. Okay, so let's see. Maybe they didn't update their grant profile, but they actually have a website. Grant researches. It takes a lot of perseverance as well. Perseverance is like willingness to do things repetitively until you get what you want. Oh, they do have a website. They just didn't list it. Oh, cool. Their mission is to cultivate the leaders of Turkmenistan. Oh, Turkmenistan's so beautiful. Okay, so Education Bridge Fund. No interest emergency awards to Turkmen students to let them stay in university. Okay. Well, this is useful to know for any of the fellows in Turkmenistan. If you have a friend or a family member who has an urgent need to stay in school and a money gap, that this grant is out there and that you could think about using it. And it looks like this is one where you get, okay, so you get a no interest loan, which means that like they give you the money and then once you're working, you pay it back. Okay, cool. That's actually really, I like that. That's really charming. If you looked at, I don't know if I probably scrolled past it too fast, but they said that in 2006, 6 returned Peace Corps volunteers who had been deeply moved by the young Turkmen they'd come to know during their 2 years of service in Turkmenistan had an idea. So that means that probably the folks whose names I listed, who are listed here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then probably there's a 6th somewhere on this. These are probably all of the friends who met during the Peace Corps, during a U.S. international exchange program. And then they chose to make a foundation, and they chose to chip in their own money and make sure that they could support people in university. I like that. That's really charming. Okay, so next up, let's look at, I don't know. We're still looking for folks that are giving directly in Turkmenistan. So it looks like National Endowment for Democracy is a big funder. They are, they work in a building that looks like this. But doesn't mean that we can't figure out a way to apply successfully there. So, supporting freedom around the world, maybe that doesn't necessarily mean they'll fund STEM projects, but I do like that they have whole sections in Cyrillic and Spanish, and is this both Urdu and Arabic? It says Darahua set Bira Kamak Mala, and this one says Al Tuqdam Bitalib Al Khasul Ala Minha. Okay, that one's definitely Arabic. I think I said something wrong. I'm not totally clear what this one is. There we go. It's Farsi because it has 3 dots under there. I know this is not the most educated way of thinking of it. It is a little easier because it just says Farsi right there. But okay, so let's stick to English. I'm going to hit apply for a grant. Neat. What kind of programs do they support? They're interested in defending human rights, supporting freedom of information, accountability and transparency, strengthening democratic processes, promoting civic education. Now this is where we start thinking about what do the donors want and what do we want? What we want is more girls having access to coding programs. What they want is promoting civic education. Maybe there's a way to do both. Maybe you have a coding camp that's like a civic coding camp, something like that, where you're learning about how your government works and you're developing tools that might be helped there. But again, this is also where you want to be careful and make sure you understand what the reputation of the organization is in your area, whether it's a good match. And so you would want to ask around with your friends to make sure that this wouldn't put you in any kind of harm. So application requirements, you have a proposal cover sheet, which they have a PDF that they'll show you. Oh, it's not so bad. When the cover sheet itself is 4 pages, you know it's going to be a long application. But again, we're looking at how much? $18,000. It might be worth it spending a couple hours writing an application to get 18,000 US dollars. Okay, back to application requirements. You have to have a proposal narrative, they have proposal guidelines, additional guidance, certificate of registration, all this stuff. Okay, how funding decisions are made on a quarterly basis, so you couldn't get it like immediately, but you might get it within a quarter. And then here's all the deadlines right there. And then when the board of directors is meeting. Now, this might be a really cool option, but maybe it's your first time writing a grant and you're feeling a little overwhelmed by this whole process. So next up, the Foundation Directory Online doesn't just have the resources for searching, you also have stuff like GrantSpace. So you can go to GrantSpace and learn how to write these applications successfully. As always, I am always happy to look over somebody's application to try and help make sure that it works for what you're going for. But let's search for a training. Let's say we're trying to figure out how to write this NED grant successfully. So we want to look up something like grant writing, which is what we're talking about here. Grant writing for artists. They have a course on proposal writing. Okay, so there's a video, and that's free but the video is really just an ad to get you to pay for the training. And it's like a 3-day grant proposal training. Now I'm gonna tell you guys a secret. Half of my lifetime ago, when I was 15 years old, I went to my very first Foundation Center training when I was an intern for the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and it was amazing, and it taught me how to do exactly what I'm doing here. It taught me how to use their database, which looked very different in 2005 than it does today, and I got to go to trainings, which was really quite cool. So self-paced learning on demand, and it's stuff like $49, but for example, it might be worth it spending $65 figuring out how to use a donor club or government funding writing the proposal. Let's say you want to get funding from a U.S. government organization like USAID or the Department of State. It might be worth you spending $35, getting all of the tech women in your area to sit with you at a computer and go through this together. So if, for example, you are Nigeria and you have 35 women, maybe you set up like a Twitch channel and you watch this all together. Or you set up like a Skype channel and you screen share it as you're going through it. Or you just all come, like all the ladies in Lagos get over and hang out at somebody's house together and figure out how to write a government grant proposal. Corporate sponsorships, how to put a price tag on what you do. Now, it's not a lot of fun to pay money to learn things from these kinds of organizations, but these are trainings that are valuable. Financial strategies for nonprofits, diversity and inclusion, something we spend a lot of time talking about, and this one is in fact free, which is lovely. And so you can also search just for free training. Introduction to finding grants. That'll probably go over a lot of what we're doing. Introduction to proposal writing. So if I was from Team Turkmenistan and I had really decided that I wanted to try and get a grant from the National Endowment for Democracy, again, all hypothetical, I have no idea what the team actually wants, I would probably start by going through and watching the Introduction to Proposal Writing and the Introduction to Finding Grants, and then thinking about listening to the podcast, which should be free, Guide to Proposal Writing audiobook. Oh, cool. Neat. So you could just download the entire audiobook of the Guide to Proposal Writing for free, and then you could learn how to write a proposal right there. Okay, so that's how GrantSpace works, which again is part of the Foundation Center. So we didn't just click Find Funding, you click to Resources, and then GrantSpace. And then there's stuff like Issue Lab. So this is a free research from social sector organizations around the world. Okay, so now let's think about being a little more sneaky, because as you guys have seen, some areas have lots and lots of different options for funding and some areas do not. So one of the ways we've talked about being sneaky is by partnering with another tech women organization, another tech women program in another country that has more donors interested in them, or more donors interested in your particular project idea for that region, partnering with them and then working with them to apply on a grant. Another thing you can do is, we're going to look again at Turkmenistan, and we're going to look at what was that specific one we had? Okay, so let's look at this one, this particular recipient. That's not what I wanted. I want particular grant makers. Okay, so this one was the one that was advancing LGBTQ rights. So why don't we look at other funders to consider? This is based off of tags. This is like when you're on Twitter and it says other accounts you'd like to follow. Patagonia, Transit Center, Deloitte Foundation, Samuel Rubin Foundation, Kurt Weil Foundation, Macy's Foundation. So let's say you have been trying to figure out an example of an organization that does what you need, but has maybe never done it in Turkmenistan. That's silly. Turkmenistan's great. The people are great, and they should definitely do work there, but maybe they just haven't gone there before. So you go into other funders to consider based off of similar patterns of giving, and you look up all these different organizations. Like, I've never heard of Spark. They don't usually come up. It looks like they've given out quite a bit of money. So you go to Spark's website, take a look at the grantees to see if they have like a really specific regional focus. Okay, it looks like they've done stuff in Malaysia, Armenia, Berkeley, Oakland, Egypt. Nice. It's a pretty broad spread. So we look under About, Accessible Opportunities. Okay, so they joined with the Global Fund for Women, which we've learned about. They have an impact guide. They have a whole staff. They've got a bunch of board members. This is another way to be kind of sneaky, is if you go through and you recognize the names of board members, or you can type the board members' names into LinkedIn and see if anybody you know from the Tech Women program knows one of the board members. Oh, okay, Spark is like a Giving Circle program that they don't seem to be giving out their own. Grant Making 101. This is about starting your own project team. Oh, interesting. That's actually really cool. Oh, right. So that's different. It looks like their money is being administered by the Global Fund for Women currently. I think that's my understanding of what I just read through. Okay, so the other way you can be kind of sneaky is you find an organization that looks similar to you, and you either go to work with them or you go to see who's funding them. So it looks like the Urgent Action Fund for Women gave them $3,500 back in, it was like 2010. So let's see if that's where we can look at grantees. Well, that's recipients. So we're going to go into the recipient area. We're going to look at everybody. We're looking at recipients in Turkmenistan. For example, this one. And then we can look down and see where they got all their money, which was the U.S. State Department with a significant amount of money. And so then we might look at Forum 18 News Service in Norway, the Institute of History under the Academy of Science at a glance. Okay, Department of State. So if I was Team Turkmenistan, I would reach out to the embassy, because it looks like a lot of the funding for the kinds of projects that we're thinking about come from the U.S. Department of State, so might as well go and talk to your friends at the Department of State. But stuff like the Caucasus Institute Foundation got money from the National Endowment for Democracy. So you're sort of seeing a relatively tight loop here, but we could go and expand it again to all of Central Asia. So you see all the different ways that you can click through and manage this database, get a sense of what you want to do and how you want to move the money, and then just dive in and find ways to do the work. So I'm really proud of you guys. I really hope this helps you find some funding for your amazing project ideas, and please reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you.